Power and the People is brought to you by Venice Home Center, Quality and Savings, the Ministry of Immigration, Unitex Company Limited, exclusive distributor of Gorilla Energy Drink and Kent Boringer products, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade.
I encourage all Belizeans to vote.
The UDP, and you cannot have two UDPs.
The time is now for us to have participatory leadership.
Belize, and welcome to Power and the People. With just 6 days to go before our elections, the general elections of 2025, we continue to bring you exclusive interview with the country's top political leaders. Tonight, the Honorable Moses Shyne Barrow will be joining us as we talk about the UDP's election strategy, internal challenges, and why he believes that he deserves your vote on March 12th. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And of course, we want to welcome our correspondents and our contributors to Power and the People. We have Demi Williams. Good night, Demi.
Good night, April.
And of course, we have Harold Young. Good night, Harold.
April.
Good
Demi,
night.
Hey.
How are we feeling?
We're here again.
Temperature check.
Feeling groovy.
Yeah.
Almost getting ready to the day. 6 days to go.
6 days out.
I'm excited like when Winnie's sits chilling.
Hey.
But of course, before we speak to the Honorable Shyne Barrow, we have to discuss what Belizeans are saying about this election. Of course, we've had several Facebook polls up on our News 5 Live pages, and so we want to be able to express some of these results. And of course, they are what are the biggest issues affecting elections in Belize. We had a couple of options for persons to decide on, and the one that had the most votes is lack of real change between parties. And we've been having this discussion almost the entire time we've had Power and the People running. What are your thoughts about the poll, Demi?
Overwhelming response for lack of real change between the parties, and I echo those same sentiments because I mean, when we had PM, he said that this whole PUDP thing sounds sexy, but it exists in our society for a reason. Because sometimes it kind of feel like it change monkey for black dog, as my granny would have said. And if they're not so Daniel, so that's why we say it. So I could feel why people are saying that. But I'm also looking at, if I'm looking at the positives, they do believe the electoral process works. Like, they don't have any issue with that part. But the problem is clearly deeply rooted in the two-party system to begin with.
Harold, do you agree?
Yeah, I think to put it in political science terms, the parties don't really have ideology, and I don't mean that in a negative way or a rigid way.
Right.
I mean they're not really clear core guidance. Now, when the Prime Minister was here, he gave some indication. He talked about social justice and economic, development and equality and equity. And he talked about that, but it's not as clear as it used to be. When it was 40 years ago, when Mr. Price was in, it was very clear, it was clearer what the ideologies were. He was much more a social justice party, people, and then the NIP at the time, then the UDP became a lot more business friendly, more capitalist oriented, less government participation, while the PUP was more about government doing things with people to, being more involved. So that was, but now I think some of that is still there, but I think at least by the manifestos, particularly the two opposition manifestos, or the manifestos from the two, anybody who is not the PUP.
Yeah.
It's kind of more like promises. It's just like, we will do this, we can do it better.
Yes.
Not that we don't do anything different. Like we don't build houses. We just don't build houses better.
All of them kind of echo the same sentiments when you look at it.
Yeah.
It's the same points being thrown across. But what I would love to see is, as you mentioned, like that clear mandate that I'm running on. What do we stand for? Like if you look at our neighbors in the north, you could tell the difference between a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate based off what they're running on.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I did have a question posed to me. I think the second week that we aired Powa and the People, and the question reads as follows: if we were to fit the two political parties in Belize into a bucket, which one would be more left-leaning or which one would be more right? I know we don't have Democrats or Republicans or stark differences like that, but how would you classify each one?
Right. So I mean, again, like I said, if you
very interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, you can do it. It's just that it's not very rigid.
Yeah.
It's not
One
or the other.
Right.
Right. So I mean, roughly speaking, I would say PUP is probably a little left of center.
ChatGPT agrees, actually.
Yeah, and
You talk to your AI?
It's my life, and I put it in there.
and UDP would be a bit more right of center.
More conservative.
More conservative, more right of
But
center.
isn't Belize a conservative country in itself?
Well, it depends on where you put it. Yes, because the center can be in different spots. Because the center in the United States, for example, is not the same center as in Europe.
Okay.
Or in England, right, for
Okay.
example. Because people who are on the left in the United States would be right of center in Europe.
Do you think that the voters in Belize are engaged, or are they disillusioned in this coming general election?
I think there's a combination. I think in one person you can find both things. On one side they will say, "Oh, I hate the PUP, or I hate the UDP, or I hate PDUDP," right? And then another time they say, "Yeah, but we gotta vote. Elections are great. We gotta go to show them."
I'm hearing a lot of that.
Kind of
like the rhetoric that popped up this week was because manifestos either came out too late or just not at all in some cases.
Still waiting for one.
Still waiting for
We're
one.
voting on personalities. That's straight vibes. We go pan. We're not voting on policies anymore. And normally, you would campaign on those policies. So the manifesto would be out there on the streets, and we would know what you're trying to put forward. But it just seems like everyone's just kind of like fighting each other. Like, well, the UDP when they did this, they had 13 years. Well, you said what people did for the past 4 years. And as a voter myself, I just kind of like, well, do I want to do this? I have to.
Yeah.
I have to do it.
But it's not that people aren't following. It's not that people aren't aware of what's going on. And it's not like they're disengaged from it.
They're very much aware.
aware
They're locked in, but what they're witnessing it's not really encouraging.
Right, it's not very, not all they want to
But
see.
because it's in our culture, like you mentioned before, we come out. We do have high voter turnouts, regardless. Like it never fall below 50%. They're going to do.
60.
They're going to do their jobs on election day, but with some
But
begrudgment.
do you think that voters are voting based on what they understand the data or the content of each of these manifestos to have?
I think when it comes to voters, it's very different depending on what demographic of voter you're talking about. Because you can't put it in our blanket anymore. I vote on the south side, and my reality has changed completely about the electoral process.
Very true.
So when a campaigner comes to my house, that's not the same conversation that they have with the people down the street from me. So it really depends on who you ask, no?
Harold?
No, I was going to say I think people aren't voting or deciding how to vote by some kind of formulary, like the way I may think about reading the manifesto and analyzing. But people know. People know what's working for them. People know if they have more money. People know if their kids are okay in school. People know.
And then I vote against the
And then I vote against
At least
the
not in
interest.
this country.
No, they don't vote against it.
Well, we have a culture where we have a political party in power for more than one term generally. And history has shown us that when one party is in power, the opposition has a lot of work to do to rebuild and to be able to gain back the public trust and momentum and so forth. So do you think that there is momentum for the UDP, or does public opinion show challenges ahead? Harold?
I think people, first of all, everybody recognizes and understands you need to have opposition party. You need to have
Absolutely.
I would say, no matter where the demographic you are or where you are in the country, people recognize that. So from that standpoint, it will indicate that the opposition, the UDP, has room to rebuild itself because
Right.
people want it to be rebuilt.
Yes.
We want
right?
it to work.
Or they want another party, or they want our opposition to be built,
Exactly.
right? Or rebuilt.
So of course, we want to
there's
throw
room
that
for it.
question to our viewers tonight. Do you think that the UDP can make a comeback? Of course, tell us in the comments below using hashtag Powa2025. And remember, you can call us at 280-0016. Tell us what you think, both your questions to us. And of course, when we come back, we are going to be joined by the leader of the opposition, Honorable Moses Shyne Barrow, to discuss the future of the UDP ahead. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Come to banquet, find your way. Engines roar at the break of day. Volvo outboard surf the waves. Castrol oil is what they crave. Live with power, feel the sound. Heavy machines shake the ground. Riding Honda, feeling proud. Rev it up and shout aloud. Feel the wind against your skin. Now so wide, let's begin. At banquet where dreams ignite. Gear up, let's take flight. Kohler's power runs our towns. JCB lifts heavy pounds. Find the tools to build your dreams. Banquet's got the best machines. Grip the wheel and never slip. Feel the rush, it's time to trip. Every brand you know and love. Banquet fits you like a glove. Feel the wind against your skins. Now so wide, let's begin. At Banquet where dreams ignite. Gear up, let's take flight.
Banquet, equipment, parts, service. We represent quality.
March 12th, it's game time. Will it be a showout or a blowout? This is the election you can't afford to miss. We're live all day. Real-time results, expert breakdowns, on-the-ground reports. Every vote, every move, every moment. Stay locked in, stay informed, and don't miss a second of history in the making. Follow the action, follow the updates, follow us.
Belize introduced its new electronic passport in 2022 through the launch of the Electronic Passport Issuance and Control System, EPICS. The e-passport includes an electronic chip that safeguards the holder's personal information and photograph. It also features a verification mechanism compatible with biometric systems such as smart gates at international borders. The passport's design reflects national pride, showcasing Belizean landmarks and symbols. It incorporates 26 modern security elements to prevent fraud and corruption. The introduction of the e-passport aims to enhance security, improve processing efficiency, and reduce application backlogs, benefiting Belizeans both domestically and abroad. The Ministry of Immigration, strengthening national sovereignty, security, and socio-economic development.
Welcome back to Powa and the People. Joining us now is Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Moses Shyne Barrow. Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Pleasure to be here.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us. And with less than a week to go before the general
5 days,
election,
right?
6 days, and before
Thursday done, man.
So, of course, we want to talk to you about major issues that are perhaps affecting the elections, but moreover, what are your plans if elected as the new government? What are your plans for Belize? How do you plan to maintain and retain the trust of the Belizean people? And of course, why should voters vote for you and your party?
Well, we launched our manifesto the 22nd, I believe, Saturday the 22nd.
First out.
Yes.
Yes.
And in that manifesto contained one of the primary core issues, which is the economy. So we have to grow the economy in order to take care of all of the social issues, the health issues, all of these different things. And one of the things that the UDP government would do is focus heavily on tax compliance. That is something that the Briceño administration promised to look after. They have not done. There are so many businesses getting away with not complying with their tax obligations, in particular the retailers and different businesses that hide the revenues that they are generating, and thus the Belizean people suffer the consequences of that. So we need to have a department of tax compliance that is tantamount to the IRS, where if you owe, you have to pay. Whatever is due has to be paid. And this is for the betterment of the country. So that is one of the things. We need tax reform. So in addition to tax compliance, we want tax reform to improve on the structure to bring people in to compliance. So there are people that are already inside the system that are not complying. But there are people that are not inside the system because the way the structure is set up, it's all or nothing.
Right.
Right? So there needs to be some adjustments with that, and we've heard the Belize Chamber of Commerce on that issue, and we would adopt some of their recommendations. As far as growing the economy, also the relationships that I have abroad. For instance, I spoke to the owner of American Eagle today. He owns DWS as well, and he's a big furniture manufacturer. So we're looking at immediate manufacturing plants. As far as the domestic investment, we will re-engage with our domestic investors. I believe the way that Michael Ashcroft and Michael Feinstein were treated is abhorrent. The message that that sends to Belizean investors, where Mr. Feinstein put so much of his life, 30 years, he and his family invested in the tourism business. And I don't have anything against the other parties involved, but I just believe that the government's responsibility was to find a solution to that situation that would have benefited all parties, but most importantly, the Belizean people. As far as Michael Ashcroft and Waterloo is concerned, that was a project at $250 million US project, $500 million Belize, and that would have rejuvenated the South Side. That would have created thousands of jobs, 1,000 permanent jobs. But this administration is haughty, is contemptuous of everyone. They have a supermajority, and they feel they don't need anyone. We're not going to have that attitude, because we are far from being a first world, a first developed nation. We have far to go as far as economic development. So we need our domestic investors as much as we do our foreign investors.
Absolutely.
So this is just some of the things as far as
from
the
what you
economy.
explained just now, because one of the questions that came about from your manifesto was how some of these goals could have been measured out, in particular free education, like where the monies would have came from those things. So just for a clarification for our viewers, through this tax reformation, the additional funds that would be uncovered,
yes,
we would then be using that to allocate towards these different initiatives.
We are losing tens of millions, probably up to $100 million a year because of non-compliance.
So just a move a bit go beyond what Demi asked. I looked at the manifesto and put two things together. One is most of the manifesto is spending. It just almost 95% is talking about spending money. And you personally have seen interviews with you where you have said that on day one, sounds very familiar. On day one, you are going to spend a bunch of money, like you're going to readapt all social services and everything on day one. And from what you have said, the economy is so bad on day one, you would not have the money to do that. So those two things don't go together, right?
Well,
and so that promise, that's a promise that sounds, you know.
Well, the economy is not what the Prime Minister says it is.
But please,
the economy,
yes,
the economy is not what he says it is. That is number one. It does not mean that we don't have a $2 billion budget every year, thereabouts. We do have that, regardless of the anemic growth that I attack all the time, because we're at like 2% growth, whereas on the Right Honorable Prime Minister Dean Barrow, we were seeing growths of 4% GDP. So immediately on day one, there is a $2 billion budget there, and it is a matter of prioritization, how you're going to spend the people's money.
So what would you cut on day one? What would you shift to social services?
There is not necessarily a matter of what you cut. I'm sure there's a lot of fat there.
But on
there's
day
a lot of,
one,
well,
on day one,
yes,
you have promised on day one that these things would be put back in automatically. And I'm saying, how do you achieve that?
Well, sir, we are not in government right now. So once you take office, then you can meet with the technocrats and you can ensure, I am certain that without necessarily cutting anything, you can implement those,
but not on day
those
one.
Projects. Why not? Why not on day one?
Oh, okay.
Why not?
Okay.
Okay, no, but
why not?
But I wanted to.
A day is 24 hours.
So in 24 hours, you assess the entire economy.
Yes,
and
we can make enough assessments.
So in 24,
we can make the necessary assessments to ensure that social services are implemented immediately.
So you are going to assess the entire
this government has a manifesto right here
let's finish up
that
what you're going to do.
promised social justice. And I believe in social justice, and those taxpayer dollars belong to the Belizean people.
Mr. Barrow,
so
you
yes,
are suggesting
on day one, we will make the necessary assessments to ensure that the monies are directed where they should be.
So on day one, you start
services.
the assessment. But on day
we
one,
will make the implementations, of course.
In 24 hours.
So obviously,
let's
you're being extremely facetious.
No,
right
I'm not.
now.
I'm asking you
You're
based
being
on what you have
facetious
said,
right now
sir.
because you cannot, nothing can necessarily happen other than the directive for the implementations to take place.
Okay, so on day one, you will start the process.
We will change the policy on day one, and the implementations will commence immediately. Now, whether or not they will be able to access that day or the next day, it will happen within a 24-hour period.
So in 24 hours,
yes,
all the services will be back.
They will be able to start
Food
to access
pantries,
that. Yes.
Everything will be back.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, different note, shifting gears, because it's clear that there is going to have to be a set pattern on how you plan to do this. I'm sure that you have been evaluating along with your team for the past 5 years how you are going to plan to do this. 24 hours, yes, it is a lot of time. However, your team, you and your team, how well are you all able to do this? What kind of qualifications do you and your team have in order to set these particular standards in motion on day one?
We have a plethora of technocrats that worked for the previous Barrow administration that still continue to guide and advise the team. We have had a cabinet for the last 5 years filled with those former CEOs and former technocrats. Obviously, for fear of victimization by this administration, you might not necessarily see those people visibly there. But we have people from the central bank, from every ministry that still continue to guide and inform. And there are some career technocrats that work for the government right now that we are in communication with. So we're not coming there to only bring in our people, but there are people there that do a good job. There's a certain CEO that works for the government right now. I think the world of her, and she's not someone that I would want to terminate at all. So we're fully prepared.
So it sounds then, from what you just said, that your administration, if you all win the elections, will be a continuation of the administration of Dean Barrow. From your father, Dean Barrow, because you said you're going to bring the people that worked with him, and those are going to be your base people to go into the new government. So basically, it's Prime Minister Barrow, Dean Barrow, 2.0?
Well, we have a political organization. We had 3 consecutive terms of success. As I said, you look at the GDP, you look at inflation, and under those 13 years, inflation was minus 0.5%. You have to allow me to finish my statements, Brother Young.
But we have a limited amount of time. We need to answer the question so we can move along.
No, man, but you never treat Prime Minister Briceño like that. I hear that you're on the blue side, but let us be professionals.
No, let's not get
Let us be professionals.
No, Mr. Barrow, please don't. Continue your answer.
Treat me with the respect that you gave the Prime Minister.
Continue your answer, Mr. Barrow.
Treat me with the respect that you treated the Prime Minister. I am the leader of the opposition, duly elected party leader, duly elected
You're wasting time.
And you need to have respect. No, I'm going to control the narrative.
Your answer.
You're not going to bully me and try to be biased and partial, right? Let us be fair. So as I was saying, the Barrow administration had 13 years of high GDP growth, low inflation rate. So I have no shame in leaning on those technocrats and those people
who supported that previous
gave that administration that type of high quality performance. Now there are younger people that have now graduated from UA, graduated from UB, that are part of the team as well, and there are career technocrats that are still a part of the government, that are not political, that we would work with, that we are in communication with right now in order to prepare, because we are the government in waiting. Regardless of what anyone says, 31 seats and all of those things, that is a probability for every election. As the opposition, we have a sworn duty to prepare every single day in opposition to take government, and that is what we've been doing.
Go ahead.
So, from what you mentioned, that there are some members, technocrats who are part of PM Barrow's administration that you would bring back in. Listening for our listeners who could reflect back on the 2020 election, and I will, he did have a great run as PM, but towards the end of it, there was a reason the tides changed in 2020. So in hearing that, you might have some listeners who it might set off red flags for them and alarms, because they know what they did at the polls in 2020 and why there was that blue wave per se. So what would be your response to them? Could we then say that we could trust these people to come back into the fold, and it would not be a repeat of what caused them to switch sides to begin with?
Well, the electorate was not voting for the technocrats. The electorate was voting out those corrupt members of cabinet that I have gotten rid of. So I totally agree with the decision that the electorate made. That has nothing to do with the technocrats. That has nothing to do with the performance of Prime Minister Barrow. He retired. So he wasn't running again.
So we wouldn't have to worry about anyone who may have aided.
Well, all of the people that I have seen the public outcry condemning as corrupt, none of them are part of my team. Their applications were rejected, and if you look at the team of people that I have, there are no former ministers there that were accused of corruption. Someone like Dr. Figueroa, he was never embroiled in any allegations of corruption while he was minister. So I don't have a concern about that. People, to elect a government, you vote for the standard bearers, for the candidates. And if you look at my slate, whether you question people like Jose Espat, activists, David Almendarez, anti-corruption people, that is what I am bringing to the table. And so it's not Barrow 2.0 in the sense of the people that form the government. However, technocrats are technocrats. Technocrats, look at people like Joseph Waite. You know, Joseph Waite has been serving this country for quite some time. He served under Prime Minister Barrow, I think Prime Minister Musa, and now under Prime Minister Briceño. So that is not necessarily someone that I'd be looking to get rid of, but Joe Waite follows policy directives. Technocrats follow policy directives. So it is not a continuation of the Briceño administration, nor Barrow administration per se. It is just able people, qualified, because the policies that we have,
the qualified job that
we have a different policy agenda than maybe what Barrow had. But what we do have in common with Barrow 1 is to grow the economy and keep inflation down.
So go ahead.
I have a question. And when we had Ms. Panton on last week and Mr. August the week before, they echoed sentiments of the unification of the UDP. So I would like to pose this scenario, because she believes that there is a path for 16, and in her path for 16 does accommodate some persons who are on your slate. Would you consider for your path to 16 to include persons who are on Ms. Panton's slate?
No, she's delusional.
So you would, so by that then, if for any reason, when the numbers come back, on just throwing it out there, you have on your fraction less than 16, but let's say whatever seats she may or may not get would have amassed the balance to create 16, you're willing to take the L?
Well, I didn't say that.
I'm just asking.
I said I don't see where her pathway to.
No, she didn't say her pathway. She said between the two sides. If you add it together, you may end up with 16 or more. And what would that fall in the government? Yeah.
Most respectfully, I had right here on Channel 5 offered a coalition months ago, which she and her Alliance for Democracy Party rejected. For the benefit of the Belizean people, we would always welcome a coalition. So I don't have an objection to a coalition, but it has to be under those definitive terms. It can't be with her passing herself off as the leader of our political organization.
Right. So no, this is constructive. So I think people, and honestly, people really want to know what would happen. Right. So from the way you're looking at it and from what you've said, and you can guide me. If the numbers, it doesn't matter how much for each one of them. If you have X and she has Y, and X and Y come together and make 16 or more, you're saying it's possible, but it has to be under your leadership, so you would be Prime Minister. I mean, is that a correct
way of looking
at it?
Yes. But listen, I don't want to speak in such definitive terms. Because it would have to be a recognition of them as Alliance for Democracy Party, us as the United Democratic Party, as a coalition, and then we could, it depends on how much seats they have and how much seats we have. And I've seen it happen in Israel, for instance, where they've rotated the prime ministership. So it could be that, I would go first as prime minister, then she would go, or maybe she would go first and I would go first. It would not include her being the leader of the UDP. She would have to remain as leader of the Alliance for Democracy Party. So to clear,
again, just to follow up on that, because I think that makes sense. It's clear what you're saying, and I really appreciate. I think the voters appreciate that. So based on that, your position is that, and I don't want to use this term, but you are the real UDP. Not a real. You are the UDP. You are the UDP, and they are not.
Just to give clarity, I'll give you clarity. For them, The clarification for that is, I and my leadership team was duly elected, some of them in 2020, February 9th, myself in 2022. There was no dispute to that. There was no court action for that. In 2023, I was endorsed along with the team, August 13th, no dispute, no challenge. October 20th, 2024, Ms. Pantan had an activity that, according to Justice Honduras, who we're before right now, appeared to breach the UDP constitution. So what I'm saying is, until a court says Ms. Pantan is the leader of the UDP, she cannot claim, well, she could claim whatever I want. We have a right,
But
freedom of speech. But there is no basis for that. There is absolutely no basis, and the fact that we occupy the UDP headquarters, control the party organs by the decision of Justice Hondoura, knowing the two competing claims, he made a decision to say, you know what, I hear you, Ms. Pantan, I hear you, Mr. Barrow, I feel Mr. Barrow would be more injured than you, Ms. Pantan. So Mr. Barrow and the central executive of the UDP will continue on.
And then the other part of it is, the other side of the coin, which I think the voters are also interested in, is the PUP wins the election. Let's say the PUP wins the election.
Yes.
Okay? Because just now we said you all won. So PUP wins the election. So you have, it doesn't matter how many seats each you have and Ms. Panda, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they're seats.
Yes.
What happens, where does the UDP move, how does the UDP move forward as an opposition? Because everybody, we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's interested, feels that our democracy, our system
needs to have
a viable opposition.
You know, I want to send commendations to, I think it's PDM, the People's Democratic Movement, who actually put out a manifesto.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have the Alliance for Democracy Party with all those former ministers with 20 years of experience, and they failed
Well, John has a
to
manifesto.
put out. I'm talking about.
He has a personal manifesto.
Just to say,
That's how you're going to move forward.
right? No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But the opposition does not have to be one single party.
No,
I, for instance.
But who leads?
No. The leader of the opposition, according to the constitution of Belize, it depends on who has the majority members in the opposition. It's not a political party.
Right,
The
exactly.
Speaker of the House does not recognize UDP or PUP. They are members, and the members on the opposition side. So, for instance, I hope that Mr. Garcia wins in Danguiga. We support him. I hope that Elvia Vega wins in Corozal Bay. We support her. So if we have those two independent members of the opposition in the House, and I have a few members, it all depends on who has the majority. And that's how you decide who the leader of the opposition is.
But they've quarreled though. The issue is still the fuss that's going on.
Well, as far as in the United Democratic Party, there's no fuss. What these people are doing is fraudulent. Article 5(e) of the United Democratic Party Constitution prohibits factionalism. So when your newsroom, which I don't quarrel with you, I don't quarrel with any of the media because I believe in freedom of speech and you guys have such an important job. So I don't want to take you to court. And it's a lot of confusion. No, it's a lot of confusion, right? So these people are passing themselves off and you're like, man, you know, what do we do? But the constitution of the UDP prohibits factionalism. So how can you have a Tracy faction and a Shyne faction? How can you have two candidates representing one constituency? According to our constitution, it does not exist. And the court, Justice Hondoura, they went to Justice Hondoura and they asked Justice Hondoura to restrain me from removing and appointing candidates. And Justice Hondoura did not do that. The election and boundaries is a politically, the Election and Boundaries Commission is a politically appointed body. It's not Josephine Tamai, who's a respected, career-long public servant. That was a political decision. All I'm saying is, we in the UDP are all right. I don't know what Tracy and the Alliance will do. They were expelled by the National Party Council, by the Central Executive, and we maintain that. If Justice Hondoura said, well, you know what? Let me tell you what will happen March 31st, because I see some people that abstract me when I say we're going to win March 31st. I wasn't speaking about the general elections. The court case, we go to trial March 31st. And if you look at the Constitution, you look at the preliminary decisions that Justice Hondoura has made, he does not believe that they complied with the UDP Constitution. It may be that he says, well, Mr. Barrow, you all did not comply with the Constitution in expelling Ms. Pantan. We could cure that. We could go through all of the process and she will still be expelled. However, October 20th will be null and void and we will continue with our party.
I just want to take this time to please remind our viewers that they can pose questions to the LOO using #Powa2025, or they can call us at 280-0016. We have the man right here. You can call us, pose your questions, make your comments, and let us know what you are thinking about going into the general elections for 2025.
Well, Dr. Young, I just want to close that question. What Tracy Pantan and her team have done to democracy is atrocious. And I do not see any way that they could ever come back to the UDP. As far as a coalition to form the next government, I've already given you the position on that. But what they have done to the party, as far as the fraud, it would have been better for them to be a third party, come with a manifesto and give the people a real option instead of confusing them and causing this mass chaos.
So the way forward for the UDP is
without them.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So
as far as me,
there's no bringing back the gang.
No, they were expelled. You know, I'll give you another example, and then I want to go into some of the manifesto pledges.
Yes.
Final thing on that. The Election and Boundaries Commission made a decision that I think is atrocious, totally undermines democracy as far as everyone can use red who wants to use red. For instance, in Mesopotamia, my name is Barrow, then you have Chang, and you have two red part up a red. So people might go and mark the whole red, and there's a spoil. I'm just saying
no, you are posing a very good point.
It's possible, right? So, but what I'm saying, I vehemently disagree with that. But what I want to do, I go and go print up my own ballot, and I go and go find one school or one warehouse somewhere and hold my own elections. No, what we did with Council Sharon Pitts, we went to the High Court and we filed for judicial review. That is how you do things. These people that want to be prime minister and want to be in cabinet, that's the same reason they voted John Saldivar and those people out, because they're lawless. When we make a decision as an MPC and a central executive, if they disagree, then take us to court. That's what I did when they took over the UDP headquarters. I could have gone there with 100 people, with, you know, violence. No. I took the shame, I took the embarrassment, I took the physical threats, and I went to court, and we got our way.
We have a caller on the line right now. Good night, caller. Thank you for calling.
Good night. While
they wait that
sorry. Put a concern, then a question.
Okay, go ahead.
When you look at UDP, it stands for United Democratic Party, meaning that you're united and the party is democratic. I have no problem with any of the leaders or anything, but my thing is this. As a political party, you serve the people, and the people should be the bosses and everything. In politics, they are there to win. Basically, they're there to win. Okay? And so my question is, why couldn't Mr. Barrow and Mr. Tracy put their differences aside and concentrate on winning as a party? Because as you know, this splitting up and this argument and everything not really hurt them. It hurts the people, especially their supporters. Just let's look at example for Big Stack and Fort George. I'm very disheartened about that because there's a lot of first-time voters who they literally took their right away from them for voting because of this bickering. You understand? And even if they felt that they didn't have a chance of winning, they should have never took away the right from those first-time voters who literally was excited about voting. So when we look at it, we could say Tracy is selfish, or we could say Mr. Barrow is selfish. But they haven't seen the hurt that they're doing to their people. You know, for example, on election day, like CDF for the poor people. And if you don't get a sweet fix before election day, you get it during election day. And so when the party is declaring like this, then the poor people who have their land and their streets that need to fix.
Let's give the LO a chance to respond to you, Carla.
Yeah. So I just thought I want to hear. I'll listen up.
Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Carla. And I totally agree with you, Carla. I agree that the type of conflict that you see here does not benefit the Belizean people. It is regrettable. That is why in 2023 we had an endorsement convention. It's not because everybody liked each other or everyone was on the same plane, but we recognize that if we did not do that, exactly what is happening would happen. But it happened anyway. Again, on this television house, I offered for Ms. Pantan, Mr. Faber, Mr. Halak to return to the UDP and to run as UDP candidates. But obviously, they would have to recognize the leader of the UDP, and they refused to do that. So I agree with the caller. I apologize that we are in this position. And it is most regrettable. He's absolutely right.
Well, before we have to take a quick break, and when we come back, there will be more of the
manifesto.
Leader of the opposition and of course policies. So we will be right back after these messages.
Immigration is making its services accessible to all Belizeans wherever they are, even in the diaspora, with partners such as the International Organization for Migration, UNICEF, the Vital Statistics Unit, and the Social Security Board. Services include on-site passport applications, renewal of permanent resident cards, and replacement of nationality certificates, among others.
Coming from Corazon, San Lucas, Orosha, Dolores, and Machakila, these people have a very hard time going out there because transportation is one of the biggest things.
I am a single mom, and I feel like if I come here, it will be more easier for me.
It's been good because it's weekend. I don't need to take off from work. It's very convenient for me not going to Bumaplan.
We are working to ensure that no one is left behind, no matter where they call home. The Ministry of Immigration, strengthening national sovereignty, security, and socio-economic development.
Get ready for fantastic discounts. From now through to September 30th, Venice is having store-wide discounts on tools, paints, appliances, plumbing and electrical products, lights and fans, household items, and much, much more. Visit a Venice store near you to enjoy fantastic discounts from now through to September 30th. Only at Venice. Quality and savings.
Veracidad, imparcialidad.
Hemos estado haciendo el trabajo como organización.
Y tus noticias en español.
Están en aguas beliceñas, entonces esta bandera se queda aquí.
Sintoniza Canal 5 cada viernes a las 7 de la noche.
Tenemos que resolver los grandes problemas de este país.
Su voz importa, su acción cuenta.
Transfusión sanguínea, elementos que indican un deterioro evidente del estado de salud.
Somos Noticiero 5 semanal.
Perdió la vida en un heroico intento de proteger a su hermano. El Tribunal de Magistrados de la ciudad de Belice se paralizó. La policía está investigando 2 asesinatos separados.
Tu fuente de información.
Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with us. We have with us the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Moses Shyne Barrow. We're continuing the conversation leading up to the general elections of 2024. 2025 now LOO. You have a manifesto. You were the first to roll it out. And we, of course, have questions about the policies that you plan to implement. Our first conversation was mostly on taxes and how you plan to...
Education, right now UB is only getting 7 million or so subvention, which was promised to be restored to 10 million, which is what it was under the Barrow administration, for 4 consecutive or 5 budgets. Well, this would have been the 5th budget, so 4 budgets. We have not seen the UB subvention restored, and that was promised to happen after COVID. Again, the Prime Minister brags and boasts about a robust GDP, economic growth, so these are the things that we need to deal with immediately, and so we would deal with that. As far as education, we would look at increasing the teacher's salary by 10%, and that would be, we would stagger that. So you do 5% in the first 2 years, maybe you could do it at 2.5% every year over the term, so that you get to that 10% by the time the term is done. That would depend on the assessment that we do, Dr. Young. That's different than the social services. I believe the social services is something that a government has to do immediately. This is a priority, but I believe this is something that could be implemented. You'd have a few months to look at this, maybe not a few months, but you'd have 100 days to look at it and decide how best to implement it, whether 2.5%, depending on what is there, what we find there. Because we see the books as presented to us, but when you go in there with your team of technocrats and actually look at what is there, then you'll know. We also need to situate the increments. There are still teachers that have not gotten their increments, their allowances. We need to digitize the process for submission of appraisals for the increments and the pensions forms. We need to increase the finance for technical and vocation schools in Belize and reduce the requirements to secure student loans for DFC, which is something that I have long championed. Right now, DFC gives loans, but if you are a poor student from the rural areas, from south side of Belize City, your parents are both unemployed. You graduate high school by the mercy of the good Lord and you want to continue to sixth form. You don't have any land as collateral. You don't have any parents to sign even the loan agreement. We need to invest, and that is through tax compliance, through getting all these different resources that we're missing out on. We need to invest in education to the level where we can say, okay, here is your loan, pay it back as soon as you get your degree and you get a job. And we can track these people. They can't escape. Once they get into the workforce, we will know and we will get the money back. That will lead to a more productive society that will pay more taxes and help grow the economy. So that short-term shock that you might take by making sure that DFC is capitalized to be able to give loans to, and remember now, as I will get into housing shortly, it's not a one-size-fits-all policy. Not everybody needs this type of loan. There are some people that could pay the loan now if they decide to get a loan. But we would assess the students, assess the family to see that they really cannot afford it. They have no collateral, their parents have no employment, they have no one to sign for them. So what we will allow them to do? Just be off in the streets where they may commit crimes, where they may have families that they can't support. So
the loan will only be for UB?
I think we start there, right? Before you could afford...
No, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just
a 20,000.
Yes,
before you could afford a $20,000 UA tuition abroad, let's start here. I know we have UA Open Campus here. We have Galen. But again, for SJC, but I'm just saying we need to look at domestic loans, right? I don't want to knock any of the universities, but the University of Belize is the state. That's the state. That's the national university, right? The other universities are private, and if you could afford that, then more power to you.
But how would you be able to work with DFC in order to decrease the interest rate? Because with a student loan, that's the highest interest rate that we have.
I didn't say anything about decreasing the rate. We would want the rate to be as low as possible, but nothing will be paid until you get your job and your degree. That is the key, whatever the interest rate is. America has 60 million $60 trillion in debt. You need debt. That's one thing I would agree with the Prime Minister on. I just don't agree that the debt that they have amassed has benefited the Belizean people, but we will agree to disagree on that. So what I'm saying is, for a student to incur a debt, regardless of what the interest rate is, we would want the interest rate to be as low as possible, but I'm not fighting to lower the interest rate. I'm fighting to make sure they pay nothing. Right now they have to pay something, and I'm telling you there's so many brilliant young minds that never get an opportunity because they simply cannot afford, they don't have collateral, and they don't have a parent with a job. Then if they go get a job, how are you going to get a job as a high school student outside of the BPO sector? And then the BPO sector, you're working until 9 o'clock, 6 days, 7 days a week. How do you go to school?
All I want to point out about that is, and I want to see more people go to university if they.
Same.
I want to see that too. But I know I went to university in the States, and I know, and when I worked, and there's a complaint about student loans burdening people coming out of university.
You're in debt before you're 25.
Debt before you start off, and they never dig themselves out, and they just get stuck. And they can't afford anything, they can't invest, they can't do anything because they have a student loan. So all I would say is caution about that being the ultimate answer. Startling people coming out on the workforce with student debt. That's my contribution.
What do you think the alternative is?
I'm not a politician. I'm not here to.
This is my point.
This is not my.
I say to the Belizean
you are the one asking people to vote for
problem.
you, sir. So
I accept that. I accept that, Dr. Young. So I will just retort that. Is it to the Belizean people? They have to ask themselves the difficult questions, right? Nothing is easy in life. I am proof of that. I have been through hell, but I have also made it to heaven. But I would never be able to enjoy heaven without hell. And I'm saying, would you prefer to not have the degree, not be in a position to further yourself as far as the remuneration, the different opportunities? No, I'm not saying to you. I said to the Belizean people.
No, I'm saying be careful. I'm saying for you, because if you win, that's what you're going to do.
Yes.
So I'm saying I'm suggesting, you ask me what I think. I'm saying be careful about making that the panacea to saddle people with student
So
loans.
it's technically not free UB education. It is pushing of student loans for persons to attend UB.
Well, what we need to do before we get to free. Now, what is free, right? You have to first do the assessments. Everyone that goes to UB doesn't need free university, right? There are some people that can afford to go to UB, right? So we need to look at the people that need the free. Then for the people who don't necessarily qualify for the free, then we could look at giving them the opportunity to finance. So those are things that we need to look at.
So since you are talking about perhaps sending people to school with a good, tertiary level education, another part of your manifesto is about doing something about unemployment rates in this country. We have had several BPOs that have, employed young persons in order to assist them, just about 20,000 of them. What would you do, though, for these persons that you're trying to actively send to tertiary level education to ensure that they have a specialized job when they're out?
So that's something that we need to assess. So when you're going to tertiary, you need to look at what is in demand, what would be the most useful skill set in the workplace. And as I said, we need to diversify. I think the agro-productive sector is something that still has not been developed. Only thing you hear about is trade of cattle, and the Minister of Agriculture is one of the biggest cattle ranchers in the country. So of course, I think if you look at the numbers, he trade all the cattle. So we need to look at how do you expand the agro-productive sector to include everyone. I see finally they stopped importation license for agriculture products. We've been crying about that for years. Vocational training is also something that we need to look at heavily and invest in. Because not everyone is academically inclined, not everyone wants to go to university, has the interest, but it doesn't mean that they can't still be productive citizens and have some type of skill set, right? And then the skill sets that we're looking at need to be customized to the market, right? What does the market need right now? What do local investors and foreign investors, what are they looking at, right? One of the things, speaking about foreign investment, that we need to look at is diversifying the international banking system. Right now we only have one international bank because there was an issue a few years ago, as some of you may recall, where the other international bank closed. But one of the complaints that I've been getting from people that want to invest in the tourism industry, for instance, is the high interest rates to be able to purchase property, purchase land, and to build. And so we need to look at that as well.
To segue back to education, just for clarification, because you mentioned about looking at what we need.
Yeah.
Would we then look at adding additional courses, offerings to UB to ensure that we have a major that could also be tantamount to getting a job later in a particular area that we need? So would we be adding more courses to UB?
Absolutely.
And then I want to add about or point out about the vocational training. I looked at the data all the data that SIB has on that, and enrollment has remained, overall for the country, has remained basically flat over like 10 years. So people are not running to the schools, right? And actually some of the districts have seen decline. The only one that showed an increase that kind of kept it flat because they brought up those who declined was Orange Walk. So this idea that this is the answer for everything, I just caution and I think it's great, but people have not shown there's no high demand for this by the people. And unemployment in Belize is, I don't know, what's the unemployment in Belize right now?
I think PM said it's less than 50%.
Unemployment?
Unemployment.
No, like 4% or something, 4 or 5, some 3, 4%.
I think he said about 3%.
As far as that 4%, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what I say. The point is that the clamor for that is, so you have to think about how do you stimulate that, right? I mean,
so as far as the unemployment rate, there's 130,000 people that are considered underemployed, not qualified to be computed when they're making their statistical assessments. So we need to look at all of those people as well. And we need to find a way. Part of the Plan Belize manifesto was to have a hub to get people into the workforce. And what we've seen is the 130,000 people, you could check Statistical Institute of Belize to verify my numbers. They've just said, well, those people, according to IMF, don't qualify because after 90 days or 6 months, they haven't found employment or they're not looking for employment, so they're unemployed. But that still leads to crime, that still leads to a poor quality of life, and that still deprives us of tax. Because if you're working, then you're paying tax and you're helping to improve the quality of life for everyone, for the collective. So we need to find a way to get those people into the workforce, and so the vocational training may be an alternative for that.
For clarity, just for clarity with the figures, and I'm not going to fight you, I'm just going to say I have done some research on that too, because I'm very interested in the labor force. And I know that the population of Belize, 140,000 people are below the age of 15. And we have 400 and something thousand people. And the labor force that's counted when they do the labor force has counted when they do the percentage of people who are unemployed is 185,000. That's the labor force of Belize. So it can't be that 135,000 people are not employed or unemployed.
A bottle of Coke.
Well, I don't drink Coke, so we can't bet that. This is not a bet.
I'll bet you a tea. I'm telling you, I guarantee you that it is in the Statistical Institute of Belize that they are. I'm not talking about people under the age of employment.
No, I'm saying just from the population, that number doesn't make sense.
130, it's there.
So we do have our viewers that are tuning in and they are watching, and of course they also have posed questions for you, LOO. And actually, I'm glad that this particular individual brought up a question concerning culture, because we haven't looked at all of the priority areas just yet. And she wants to know, what are your priorities and calls for reparations for Black Belizeans? What she has particularly mentioned the Garifuna community. Also today, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines acquired the island of Balisau. Would you consider going and taking some Garifuna people to do their pilgrimage? So this is a two-part question. But yes, this is very much appeal to a particular area, very, very specific to a demographic of Belize when it comes to culture and reparations.
Yeah. Well, when I first became leader of the opposition, senior counsel had reached out to me to get bipartisan support for the reparation motion that was passed in the House by this government. So I believe that is a bipartisan issue that both the UDP and the PUP support. I remember very vividly when that came to my desk, and there was no reluctance, and so the UDP and the PUP support reparations as far as that motion is concerned. I know that the Jamaicans have a suit against the United Kingdom, and I'm not sure Belize's participation in that suit, but yes, definitely, UK owes Belize reparatory justice. I know that my great grandfather Ebenezer Oliver Bunton Barrow was the secretary. No, he was the secretary of the National Party, which was the UK pro-British party. So he may be rolling over in his grave, right? But I do believe in reparations. I do believe in reparatory justice. As far as the Garifuna, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Esme Diaz, is a Garifuna woman, born in Honduras. And so that side of my family is Garifuna. So yes, certainly we would support all cultures, because then on my father's side, Granny Aina Rebecca Gab Lindo is a Maya woman from down in Toledo. So yes, cultural support is very important. As ambassador of music, I was very, very involved in the arts and culture, and always gave support where I could, and so that wouldn't stop under this.
Hello, be careful, you know. Twice now you've the synergy with the PUP on the reparation thing. No, this is good. Hold on, let me finish. I think it's good. I'm saying this is good. The national interest issues.
When I disagree with them,
national interest
gives me credibility.
That's what I'm saying.
So here's another question tossed out by one of our viewers. Hello, what would you do to create a direct air link to CARICOM countries?
Again, I've already started the work. I have met with many of the prime ministers of CARICOM, Prime Minister Holness, that was most recent, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell in Grenada. Holness is from Jamaica, for those who don't know. Prime Minister Pierre, I met with him. I was the first Prime Minister I met with, as a matter of fact. Prime Minister Brave Davis from Bahamas. And leaders of the opposition as well, Mark Golden, Chasne, all of these leaders for that exact reason, so that we can have greater synergy with our CARICOM brothers and sisters. The CARICOM Secretariat was recently here, and we met with them. So I definitely believe in that collaboration, in baking that out, fleshing that out, and strengthening that.
Wonderful.
I remember when there was a link.
We have a call coming in from the diaspora, all the way from New York.
And we have a lot of investment from Jamaica in Belize as well.
Good night, caller coming in from New York. Thank you for calling in.
Good night, Ms. Martinez. Good night, Dr. Young. Good night, Ms. Williams, and good night, Mr. Barrow.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm listening to the conversation so far, but I wanted to stick a pin on the manifesto. Manifestos are created to put forth pledges, etc. However, it's critically important to understand that these pledges that are put forth, there must be a pathway to be able to achieve them, make them a widely achievable goal. I'd like for Mr. Barrow to expound a bit on two areas in his manifesto. Considering that Belize is a microcosm in the global affairs of particularly the world and the Western Hemisphere, and understanding that what's happening right now in North America with the trade war and the tariff war that's happening with Canada, Mexico, China, and the global affairs that's happening, how does he foresee reducing the cost of fuel as is stated in the manifesto? And secondly, how does he see Belize transitioning to cleaner forms of transportation, considering that in the manifesto, he has stated that he wants to see an upgrade by bus owners within the scope of what transportation would look like for Belize in the near future. Because quite frankly, what we are facing is a high susceptibility to the impacts of climate change, and that the front of any policy decision going forward, Belize has to continue to be nationally at the forefront of tackling the climate crisis, but also considering the impacts of the global affairs as well. So I'd like for Mr. Barrow to expand on those 2 points in particular.
Mr. Barrow?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, caller. So, a few things. President Trump is a extremely skilled and fierce negotiator. And so all this talk of tariffs has, for the most part, been just that. I just read today where he went on X and said, oh, he just spoke to the president of Mexico and, you know, no tariffs right now.
He's suspending it, I think, for another 30 days.
Right? So what I'm saying is he's negotiating. He feels that he could get more out of the arrangements that they have with their bilateral partners. And so he is posturing. So we have not seen the shocks of those tariffs thus far, and we may not see them because once Canada then says, well, okay, Mr. Trump, this is what we will do, I'm certain that the negotiator that he is, just as he's come to terms with President Shyne Barrow, he will come to terms with Canada, in my opinion. So we have not seen those shocks and how they would impact the cost of fuel. So I could not speculate at this point what those shocks will be. But barring those shocks, I could tell you how we would reduce the cost of fuel. And that is by the government taking over the fuel business rather than having a wholesaler, a private wholesaler who is only interested in generating revenues, as all corporations should do. I have no quarrel with that, but not on the backs of Belizeans. And I don't understand why it has been this way for successive governments, but it will change under the UDP government. So Dr. Young, that is a diversion from Prime Minister Barrow, because under him, the government did not control the fuel. Under Shyne Barrow, we would take that over to ensure that we keep fuel at $10.
How do you know it's going to be $10?
No, that's what we will do. We will make sure that
so it won't
we
go
do,
down, it will stay at $10?
No, we'll keep it at $10.
Okay, so it's not going to go down?
It won't go beyond $10.
Okay.
If the market allows for it to go down, we want it to go as low as possible, but we would cap it, cap it at 10.
So you're saying government will get involved in, will take over the fuel supply industry?
Yes.
And government will sell fuel? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. As we are wrapping up, because time goes very fast. It's very fast. Please, final words for our viewers tonight. Why should they vote for you and your administration come March 12th?
And why should they turn out?
And why, why should they turn out to vote?
Yeah.
Well, I also agree with the caller previously. It is a shame that the people in Fort George and Pickstock, especially the new voters, the first-time voters, didn't have a chance to exercise,
regardless of the party,
their democratic right, regardless of the party. And voter turnout is important. Participating in our democracy is important.
Absolutely.
It is critical for your voices to be heard, whether you are UDP or PUP. Everyone should come out because politicians work for the people, and now is performance appraisal time. And so come out and let all of us hear how you feel. Failure to do that, we go into authoritarianism, we go into autocracy, you know, we end up in a dictatorship. So it is important that those tens of thousands of people that voted for the UDP the last time to come out and vote again. Retreating is not the answer. Not coming out will only lead to a potential supermajority where we'll continue to get the same type of treatment that we've gotten over the last couple of years. If you look at the discourse, it is not that the PUP has done so well. It is the chaos and the distraction in the United Democratic Party that dominates the conversation. The Prime Minister, none of the members of Cabinet have come on any of the talk shows to go through what they promised and what they delivered, because they have not had to do that. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues have given them the escape. But I say to the Belizean people, don't give them the escape. Come out and vote, and now is the time to express your disenchantment. I know the Red Hills, even the Prime, again, me and the Prime Minister agree that they got problems in the Red Hills. So Kayo is definitely going to come in. Obviously, Julius Espat is strong. You know, Mira, Brother Ralston will do his best. But in the upper belt of Kayo, I believe we'll take all the seats in the upper belt of Kayo. In the north, we're very strong in the north. So don't be distracted, my Belizean people, right? Don't let them convince you that the elections are over. It is far from over. Not because we don't form the government means that we don't improve, and that you don't let them know, even PUPs, even independents, express your disappointment with the highest cost of living ever. Express your disappointment with the different policies that were not implemented, with the way the teachers were treated, with the way the firefighters were treated, with the way the healthcare, public health system is going, the way NHI has been privatized. There are many things that Belizeans are not happy with. And so coming out and expressing that disappointment is to their benefit. It's not for the UDP or the PUP, it's for the betterment of Belize. And I, as leader, over the last couple of years, I have said that I would ramp out, root out corruption in the UDP, and I've done that at the risk of my own leadership. So when I tell you, the Belizean people, that I will do something, if we were so fortunate to form the next government, all of these things that I'm telling you I will do, I will do. That is how I've lived my life. Integrity. I've made colossal sacrifices from the age of 18 and 19 up to now to keep my word. And so I'm not in politics to be famous. I'm already famous. Not in politics to self-enrich. I already have wealth. In fact, my wealth has been reduced tremendously because I'm investing in politics. So the only gain I have is for my daughter and your children, your nieces, your cousins, to create a Belize that gives the young people and eligible people the opportunities that I had when I grew up. I was fortunate to leave Carousel Street in Mesopotamia, born and grow, and go to Brooklyn with my mom, fellow Brooklynite, and have opportunities that I could only dream of. And I feel guilty about that. And I feel that for the rest of my life, even if I go back to private sector at some point, I will be fighting to make sure that Belizeans have the opportunity and that we continue to create the Belize of our wildest imaginations. But that cannot happen unless they come out and vote.
Wonderful. Elo, thank you so much for being here with
Thank
us
you for having
tonight.
me. Thank you.
Best of luck on
Thank you.
election day. Best of luck to you and your team, and thank you once again. Do you believe that the UDP will regain their strength to govern? Let us know in the comments section below. We'll be right back after these messages.
Come the banquet, find your way. Engines roar at the break of day. Volvo outboard surf the waves. Castrol oil is what they crave. Live with power, feel the sound. Heavy machines shake the ground. Riding Honda, feeling proud. Rev it up and shout aloud. Feel the wind against your skin. Stars so wide, let's begin. At banquet where dreams ignite. Gear up, let's take flight. Kohler's power runs our towns. JCB lifts heavy pounds. Find the tools to build your dreams. Banquip's got the best machines. Grip the wheel and never slip. Feel the rush, it's time to trip. Every brand you know and love. Banquip Banquet fits you like a glove. Feel the wind against your skin. Now so why, let's begin. At Banquet where dreams ignite. Gear up, let's take flight.
Banquet, equipment, parts, service. We represent quality.
March 12th, it's game time. Will it be a showout or a blowout? This is the election you can't afford to miss. We're live all day. Real-time results, expert breakdowns, on-the-ground reports, every vote, every move, every moment. Stay locked in, stay informed, and don't miss a second of history in the making. Follow the action, follow the updates, follow us.
Belize introduced its new electronic passport in 2022 through the launch of the Electronic Passport Issuance and Control System, EPICS. The e-passport includes an electronic chip that safeguards the holder's personal information and photograph. It also features a verification mechanism compatible with biometric systems such as smart gates at international borders. The passport's design reflects national pride, showcasing Belizean landmarks and symbols. It incorporates 26 modern security elements to prevent fraud and corruption. The introduction of the e-passport aims to enhance security, improve processing efficiency, and reduce application backlogs, benefiting Belizeans both domestically and abroad. The Ministry of Immigration, strengthening national sovereignty, security, and socio-economic development.
Wrap up tonight, let us reflect on what we've heard tonight. What should voters take away from our conversation with the leader of the opposition? And what's left to watch in the final days before the election? I will start with you, Demi.
So I will say that Mr. Barrow is definitely a man of strong convictions. He does not sway when he believes something. And his passion about what he was saying was definitely evident. One of the challenges that we've been having the last couple of weeks talking to the different leaders is that we don't necessarily get a clear answer on some of the questions that we ask. And I know that we have viewers that they're like, oh, but they never answered the question.
We recognize that.
We recognize that, guys. But I think what was very fruitful from that is that Mr. Barrow emphasized his position on a lot of things. It's very clear that he does not recognize fractions. He stated it very clearly that it's not in the UDP constitution to even have that. So she's recognized, Ms. Panton's part, her slate is recognized under the Barrow administration as a third party in and of itself. So there's a little bit of, if election day comes and we are mixed up, like bile up in terms of the UDPs, there's still much to iron out there. And going into an election, that is the main concern. That's what we've been trying to highlight even when we had Ms. Panton here. I know that the media does a lot of talk about the UDP infighting. It's because if you can't play together, you can't work together. Whether you're forming a government or you're sitting on the opposition side of things. Either way, you've weakened the democracy. So until you guys can come to a consensus, we are in trouble in terms of our democracy is in trouble.
What did you think about his concept of we will switch turns in being leaders in government if elected?
Based on the interviews, okay, let me start just below that. Based on how he sees it going for the way he views Tracy Panton's faction.
Yes. He views it as a third party.
Yeah, and he's alliance. Saying if we do, the important part was both when you win and if you don't win. If you don't win, the rebuilding is under him.
Yes.
Yes.
Under the UDP, under him, the rebuilding. He's the leader, and if you don't come back to the UDP, we don't take you back. It's on our terms because it's us. We're not rebuilding.
But he said he's not taking them back.
Yeah, he said he had already called out. for them to come back.
And he's referred to cleaning out the corruption and the people out of the party, and he said, I did that.
And you know,
So
I know that there are voters that
so
agree,
there's
that agree
like
when he says that.
So
1
it's not
hour
clear.
is not,
No, it's not enough.
Enough for
No,
sure. And there was
definitely.
a lot that I wanted to ask him in terms of, you know, why he chose the persons that he chose to be standard
Sure.
bearers. What did he think about those that did
There
not
was
show up?
a little bit of
you
a
know?
sentiment that he echoed. You know, people who are big on justice and
Yes.
social justice, and he called out the
Almandares
and Mr.
Espat.
Espat.
Yeah.
So
The other thing I thought was interesting and also really good, because I think it's an important thing, is the idea of revenue.
Yes.
How do you bridge the gap between the receivables under the current tax regime, any kind of tax you're talking about, receivable under tax regime, how much the government actually collects.
correct.
Right? And the Prime Minister, when he was here, admitted that the national government collects maybe just over 50%. Now, where the Prime Minister might have been clearer is the mechanism to try and bridge that gap. He talked about the customs issue with the AI to match and all that stuff. Mr. Barrow was less clear. He talked about enforcement and an enforcement section, but I mean that's not important. But I'm saying, but both of them on the same
Page
with that's an issue. The hemorrhaging of money based on the collectibles for the size of the economy is a problem, is an issue.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing. He wasn't as clear as the Prime Minister, but that's where we need him to be.
What should voters and viewers be looking out for as the final stretch leads to March 12th?
Well, I don't think that anything is going to change in the opposition's scenario between.
That magic not happen
It's
overnight.
not going to happen before, and I'm skeptical, and even more skeptical now based on what Mr. Barrow said about any sort of kumbaya moment after.
Which actually contradicts what Mr. Aga said when he was here,
Yes,
because he said the
yes.
UDP will unite.
Yes, and he said that we will
that's
have.
that's a deputy
Yes,
chairman.
that's a different. Yeah.
So I found that
so
interesting.
I'm not.
You can have a dream. You can believe in it, right?
But what I think what the last stretch with 6 days, 5 days, whatever it is, I think the people should look at the scorecard, but look at the performance of the government, because that's what's the issue.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said to do.
People need to look
if you
at it.
can look around and not see change, then don't vote for us.
Right, and you can look. I think people should look. Maybe 3 areas. They should look at personal, like did my street get fixed, or something like really personal like that. But also look at the overall picture, the community, the cities, the towns where they live, and then think also about internationally. How is Belize looked at internationally? And not everybody can do all those things all at once. But I'm saying that's the kind of buckets you need to.
But
rate
and they're
them
not
on.
even buckets, because at the end of the day, all of these things intertwine and affect you, individually. So I am loving where these conversations are going. Thank you, viewers, so much for sticking with us. Final thoughts before we wrap up, Demi and Harold.
I'm looking forward to the results, because I think it will give us some very vital information beside who wins and loses the overall election.
Yes.
I think it will tell us a lot about what's going on with people, how people view voting, whether people are as discerning as I think they are, because I think people are discerning, more discerning than maybe some of my colleagues may think. Not colleagues, I mean my circles.
Yes, your wider
circle. So I think that will also tell a lot about that. And I don't think, as I said, I don't think that the color thing will be a significant confusion for people.
And you use the village council.
And the village council, we have
election as your
201 villages, and they're not color coded, and there's multiple people because you're voting for the whole council, and people go in and vote, and there's no confusion. I think people will go in and read and do just fine.
Demi, final thoughts on tonight?
I think that it kind of, our interview with Mr. Barrow definitely confirmed that there is going to be a report card to be issued on March 12th.
Yes.
We are going to see how the Belizean people really feel about the factions, whether or not he acknowledges that they exist or not.
Yeah.
The point is, it's on the ballots.
Yes.
And in some constituencies, you can see eye to eye where they go. I am hoping that whenever those results come out, that they could find a way to commune with each other and really see where they stand. Because at the end of the day, and he alluded to it,
yes,
that they never made a sing kumbaya to begin with.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
That's
parties
neither
are like
here
that.
nor there.
Parties are
When
like
you
that.
just had 13 years
Yeah.
of being in power, and now all of a
And a
sudden
great
you're the
loss, a big
opposition with a
loss,
big
yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
Of course,
Exactly.
things are not going to be
Emotions
fine
run
and
high,
Yes.
all of that. I get it. So it would definitely be a reckoning across the board. And I'm not absolving the current government from that either, because he mentioned the Red Hills.
Yes.
And that would definitely tell how much of a change the PUP was able to make or not make. Because some of those constituencies were UDP strongholds. I think one had like
3 or 4 elections.
Yeah, exactly. So did you really make that of a dent?
Yeah.
And then also looking at what's happening in the north, Mr. Barrow believes that they're very strong in the north.
But you know what? They talks about the Red Hills, they talk about these different factions and so forth. Still tells us that we're in a culture that still votes for party and not policy. We're still there a little bit, because if you are so confident in your Red Hills, then I'm not really sure how much campaign investment is going in there, how much talks about policy is going in there. And of course, we're going to be seeing that on come March 12th. But we are completely out of time. Thank you, viewers, so much for sticking with us. Yes, of course. Go ahead, Harold.
Just a shout out to my sister Yvonne Sharman, who had cataract surgery today and is recovering at home.
She's listening to us
And shout out to Dr. Hoy, who we think did a fantastic job. And I hope she gets a speedy recovery.
I'm just very grateful to all of our viewers that have tuned in, both locally and abroad. Caller, thank you so much all the way from New York for calling us and letting us know your thoughts. We are going to be having our final show on Tuesday, and there are 6 days left to the elections. And of course, Powa and the People will be back Tuesday right here at 7:30 p.m. Stay tuned, stay engaged. Remember, you have the power. We'll be seeing you soon, Belize. Have a good night.
Good night, Belize.
Good night.
Powa and the People is brought to you by Bennett's Home Center, Quality and Savings, the Ministry of Immigration, Unitex Company Limited, exclusive distributor of Gorilla Energy Drink and Kent Boringer products, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade,